The starship descended through the bruised purple sky of Colony Outpost 7 like a falling monument. It was a vessel of impossible elegant smooth obsidian curves, inlaid with veins of bioluminescent gold that pulsed with the rhythm of something alive. The kind of ship that announced royalty without needing words. The kind that made the colonists of this struggling human settlement stop their work and stare upward with a mixture of awe and dread. Marcus Chun didn't stop working. He was 3 joints deep into the colony's water reclamation system, his hands black with mineral deposits and coolant fluid, when the shadow of the royal craft passed over the maintenance bay. Around him, the other mechanics dropped their tools and rushed to the grimy windows, pressing their faces against the glass like children at a parade. "It's the Valdari," someone whispered, the word carrying weight. The Valdari sovereignty and empire that spanned 12 star systems. A civilization so advanced that humanity's greatest achievements looked like cave paintings in comparison. Marcus grunted and returned his attention to the corroded pipe joint in front of him. The colony's water filtration had been running at 60% efficiency for 2 months. That mattered more than whatever political theater was about to unfold in the landing plaza. "Marcus, man, you gotta see this," called out Jenna from the window. "There's like 30 royal guards coming down the ramp. All that fancy armor." "Good for them," Marcus muttered, finally threading the replacement coupling into place. "Maybe they can fix the eastern irrigation line while they're feeling helpful." But even Marcus couldn't ignore what happened next. The comm system crackled to life, not the colony's usual frequency, but an override broadcast that came through every speaker, every terminal, every device capable of receiving signals. The voice that emerged was translated into crisp, formal English by some technology far beyond human achievement. "Citizens of Colony Outpost 7, the Valdari sovereignty extends greetings. We bring to your settlement the Princess Kalineth Vas Valdari, 18th daughter of the Solar Throne. She will reside among you as an observer and liaison. We trust you will extend to her the hospitality that reflects your species' better nature." The transmission ended. Around Marcus, the mechanics exchanged confused looks. An alien princess here? Colony Outpost 7 wasn't even important enough to warrant a proper name. Just a number in the Earth Colonial Administration's database. They were a water farming community on a marginally habitable moon, producing enough to supply the mining operations on the neighboring planetoid and barely enough to feed themselves. There were 347 humans here, most of them people who had nowhere else to go or were running from something. "Why would royalty come here?" Jenna asked, voicing everyone's confusion. Marcus had a bad feeling about it. In his experience, when powerful people showed up in places like this, it was never for a good reason. He finished securing the pipe joint, wiped his hands on his already filthy work coveralls, and headed for the door. Whatever this was about, it would affect the colony's resources, and that meant it would eventually become his problem. Better to understand it now. The landing plaza was packed. It seemed like every colonist who could walk had come to witness this impossible event. Marcus pushed through the crowd, his shorter stature making it easier to slip between bodies. He emerged near the front, just as the royal procession made its way down the starship's ramp. The Valdari were stunning. That was the only word for them. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shift between shades of deep violet and midnight blue depending on the light. Their faces were angular, with high cheekbones and eyes that were slightly too large, slightly too luminous to be human. The guards wore armor that looked like it had been grown rather than forged. Organic curves that caught the light and scattered it in prismatic patterns. And in the center of this magnificent assembly walked the princess, Kayla. Neth was smaller than the others, though still taller than most humans. She wore robes of deep silver that moved like liquid, and her hair, if it could be called hair, flowed down her back in strands that seemed to be made of light itself, shifting through blues and purples and occasional flashes of gold. She was beautiful in a way that made Marcus's chest ache, but something was wrong. She moved carefully, one hand extended slightly in front of her. Her steps were tentative, cautious, and her eyes, those large, luminous Valdari eyes, didn't track the crowd around her. They stared forward, unfocused, seeing nothing. She was blind. Marcus felt the realization ripple through the crowd. Whispers started, then grew louder. And in those whispers, Marcus heard something that made his jaw clench. They sent us a broken princess. What are we supposed to do with her? Some honor. They're dumping their damaged goods. The royal guards' faces remained impassive, but Marcus saw the slight tightening around their eyes. They'd heard it too. And they didn't disagree. The princess's own expression never changed. She held her head high, her face a mask of royal dignity. But Marcus saw her free hand clench once, briefly, in the folds of her robe. The colony's administrator, Gerald Wang, stepped forward with a forced smile. He was a decent man trapped in an impossible job, trying to keep a failing settlement alive with insufficient resources and too many desperate people. This was the last thing he needed. "Your Highness," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "Colony Outpost 7 is honored by your presence. We've prepared quarters for you in our—" He hesitated, clearly realizing that everything here would be an insult compared to what she was used to. "In our residential complex. We hope you'll find them adequate." One of the guards, a tall male with ceremonial markings that suggested high rank, stepped forward. His lip curled slightly as he surveyed the dusty plaza, the prefabricated buildings, the crowd of grimy colonists. "The princess will require minimal accommodation," he said, his tone making it clear what he thought of the whole situation. "She is here to learn humility and the value of simpler things. His Majesty believes that time among your kind will provide perspective." The words were polite. The meaning was not. They were getting rid of her. This wasn't diplomacy or cultural exchange. This was exile, dressed up in formal language. They were dumping their blind princess on a nothing colony at the edge of nowhere because she was an embarrassment to them. Marcus felt anger kindle in his chest. He knew that look in the guard's eyes. He'd seen it his whole life, from officers who thought mechanics were beneath them, from corporate administrators who saw colonists as expendable resources, from people who measured worth in titles and appearances, rather than what you could actually do. The princess said nothing. She stood there, dignified and silent, as her own people handed her over like unwanted cargo. The guards departed quickly, clearly eager to leave this backwater. Their ship lifted off in a wash of displaced air and exotic energy, rising into the purple sky until it vanished in a flash of light that meant faster-than-light transition. Gone. The crowd dispersed slowly, returning to their work with uncomfortable expressions. Nobody quite knew what to do with a blind alien princess. She stood in the plaza with Administrator Wang, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Your Highness," Wang said carefully, "I'll have someone show you to your quarters. I'm afraid they're quite basic. We don't have much here." "I require little," Kelleneth said. Her voice was musical, the translation technology giving it an otherworldly quality. "I am accustomed to being where I am not wanted." The words were quiet, dignified, and absolutely devastating. Wang flinched. "That's not we're honored to—" "Please," she interrupted gently. "There is no need for comforting lies. I understand my situation. If you would simply show me where I may stay, I will endeavor to burden you as little as possible." Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward. "I'll show her," he said. Wang looked relieved. "Marcus, thank you. The quarters we set up are in Building 7, 3rd floor, room 14. It's not much, but it's clean and the environmental systems work." Marcus nodded. He approached the princess slowly, very aware that he was covered in grime and probably smelled like recycled coolant. "Your Highness," he said. I'm Marcus Chen. I'm a mechanic here. I can take you to your quarters if that's acceptable. Kalineth turned her unfocused gaze in his direction. For a moment, Marcus had the strangest sensation that she was seeing him anyway, looking past his appearance to something deeper. "Thank you, Marcus Chen," she said. "I would appreciate guidance. I am not yet familiar with this place." "We'll take it slow," Marcus said. He glanced around, saw a maintenance cart parked nearby. The residential building is about a 10-minute walk. The ground here is pretty level, but there are some uneven spots. "Would you like to take my arm, or would you prefer I just describe the path?" Kalineth paused. "You ask my preference?" "Well, yeah. It's your choice how you want to navigate." Something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe, or something softer. "Taking your arm would be helpful." "Thank you." Marcus extended his arm, and Kalineth's hand settled lightly on it. Her touch was warm, her fingers long and elegant. He started walking slowly, narrating as they went. "Okay, we're heading east across the main plaza. It's about 50 meters to the edge, then we'll take a paved path. The ground here is packed dirt and gravel, decent footing, but watch for a slight dip about 5 steps ahead." They walked in silence for a moment. Marcus was intensely aware of the stares from the colonists they passed, the whispers. He ignored them. "You smell of machine oil and metal," Kalineth said suddenly. Marcus winced. "Sorry, I was working on the water system when you arrived. I'm kind of a mess." "I did not say it was unpleasant," she replied. "Merely an observation. It is the smell of work. Of purpose. I find it comforting." They reached the residential building, and Marcus guided her through the entrance and to the lift. The quarters were small, just a single room with a bed, a desk, a small hygiene station. The window looked out over the colony's western water fields, where row after row of modified earth crops grew in the alien soil under hydroponic assist systems. "It's not much," Marcus said, describing the layout in detail. Bed against the north wall, desk and chair under the window on the east side, hygiene station in the southwest corner. "The environmental controls are on a panel by the door. I can set them to voice activation if you'd like." "What's comfortable for Valdari?" "You think of practical matters," Kalineth said. "Most humans I have encountered in diplomatic contexts think only of ceremony and appearance." "Most humans you've met were probably politicians or ambassadors," Marcus said, making his way to the environmental panel. "I'm a mechanic. We think about what works." He tapped through the settings. "Okay, it's set to voice activation now. Just say environment, and then what you want: temperature, humidity, lighting, whatever." "You did not need to do that," Kalineth said softly. "Took 30 seconds, Marcus replied. "Why shouldn't you be able to control your own space?" Kalineth moved carefully to the center of the room, her hand trailing along the wall as she oriented herself. "May I ask you something, Marcus Chun?" "Sure. Why do you help me?" "Your people clearly view my presence here as an unwelcome burden. I heard their words in the plaza. Broken princess, damaged goods. You must think the same." Marcus felt that anger kindle again. "No," he said flatly. "I don't. Why?" He was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. "When I was 16, I lost 3 fingers on my left hand in a shuttle accident. Some malfunction in the airlock during an emergency decompression. They grew them back. Mostly medical tech is pretty good, but they never worked quite right after. Not enough fine motor control for pilot certification. That had been my dream, you know. Flying." He looked down at his left hand, flexing the fingers that still responded just slightly slower than they should. "People told me I was broken. That I should find appropriate work. Something that didn't require precision. But then I met an old mechanic named Sarah who told me that my hands weren't broken, they just worked differently now. And different wasn't the same as useless." She taught me that the best mechanics aren't the ones with the most perfect hands. They're the ones who can feel what's wrong with the system, who understand the flow and rhythm of how things work together. He met Kalinef's unfocused gaze. You can't see, but I watched you walk across that plaza. You were mapping everything, the sounds, the air currents, the texture of the ground under your feet. You were reading that space in ways sighted people never do. That's not broken. That's just different. And different can be powerful if people give it a chance. Kalinef was very still. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. No one has ever said such things to me. Then you've been surrounded by idiots, Marcus said bluntly. Your Highness. A sound escaped or something between a laugh and a sob. Just Kayla, please. I think I would like to dispense with titles here, if you don't mind. Kayla, then. Marcus moved toward the door. I should let you rest. It's been a long day. If you need anything, just ask anyone for Marcus Chun from maintenance. The colony's small enough that everyone knows where to find me. Marcus, Kayla said as he reached the door. Thank you. Not just for the help. For the words. For treating me as if I am more than my limitations. You are more, Marcus said simply. Anyone with eyes should be able to see that. He left her then, heading back to the maintenance bay and the endless list of repairs that kept the colony functional. But his mind stayed on the princess standing alone in that small room, exiled by her own people, surrounded by strangers who saw her only as a burden. The colony didn't change much with Kella's arrival, at least not at first. She kept to herself, venturing out only occasionally, always moving with that careful precision that spoke of someone who had learned to navigate a world not built for her needs. The colonists largely ignored her, uncomfortable with her presence, unsure how to interact with alien royalty, especially alien royalty, that made them feel guilty just by existing. Marcus saw her sometimes in the communal dining hall, sitting alone while conversations flowed around her but never included her. He saw her in the small colony garden, her fingers trailing over the earth plants with something like wonder. He saw her standing by the observation windows that looked out over the water fields, her face turned toward a view she couldn't see but seemed to appreciate anyway. It bothered him, but he didn't push. She knew where to find him if she needed help. 2 weeks after her arrival, the Eastern Water Distribution System failed completely. Marcus got the alert at 0400 hours, dragged himself out of bed, and arrived at the pump station to find Jenna and 2 other mechanics already there, staring at the main control panel with expressions of deepening horror. How bad? Marcus asked. Bad, Jenna said. The primary distribution pump just seized. And when I say seized, I mean it's fused. The whole thing is going to need to be replaced, and we don't have a replacement. The backup pump is running, but it's operating at maybe 40% capacity. The eastern fields are going to start dying by tomorrow if we don't figure something out. Marcus swore. The eastern fields represented 30% of the colony's food production. Losing them would mean rationing, would mean drawing on the emergency reserves that were already depleted from last season's drought. Show me, he said. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon. The pump was indeed destroyed. Something had gone wrong with the magnetic bearing system, causing catastrophic friction that had literally melted components. Marcus tore into the backup pump, trying to understand why it was running so poorly. But the system was a maze of interconnected components, each one affecting the others in ways that weren't immediately obvious. By evening, they'd made no real progress. The eastern fields were already showing signs of water stress. Administrator Wang came by personally, his face drawn with worry, asking questions Marcus couldn't answer. It was dark when Marcus finally stumbled out of the pump station, his mind spinning through possible solutions and finding none that would work. The colony didn't have the resources for a new pump. They could try to cannibalize parts from other systems, but that would just cause failures elsewhere. They could put in an emergency request to the Colonial Administration, but supply ships came maybe twice a year. And the eastern fields couldn't wait that long. He was so lost in thought that he almost walked past her. Kayla sat on a bench near the pump station, her face turned toward the building. She was alone, as always, wrapped in a simple cloak against the evening chill. "Marcus," she said as he approached. "You're troubled." He stopped, surprised. "How did you know it was me?" "Your gait," she said simply. "You favor your left side slightly when you're tired. And you're clicking your tongue against your teeth, a thinking habit, I believe." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. "Observant." "I have little else to do but observe," Kayla said. There was no bitterness in her tone, just a statement of fact. "The water distribution system is failing?" Marcus sighed and sat down beside her. "Yeah, the main pump is destroyed, and the backup isn't powerful enough to handle the load. I can't figure out why the specs say it should be able to manage at least 70% capacity, but we're getting barely 40. Without that water, we're going to lose a third of our food production. May I help?" Kayla asked. Marcus opened his mouth to politely decline. What could she do? But stopped himself. Different wasn't useless. Wasn't that what he'd told her? "Sure," he said. "I mean, it's pretty technical, but another perspective might help. Want to take a look?" They went inside the pump station. The backup pump was running, its rhythm audible as a low thrum through the floor. Marcus led Kayla to the main control panel and started explaining the system, how the water was pulled from the underground aquifer, processed through filtration, distributed to the fields through a network of pipes and control valves. Kayla listened intently, her head tilted slightly. "May I touch the equipment?" she asked. "Yeah, of course. Just be careful, some of it gets hot." He guided her hand to the pump housing. She pressed her palm against it, and then her whole hand. And then she closed her eyes, which didn't matter, Marcus realized, and just stood there. "Feeling, the vibration is uneven," she said after a long moment. "Yeah, that's part of the problem. I think there might be debris in the impeller, but I've already checked and—" "Not the impeller," Kayla interrupted. "Further. The resonance pattern suggests the interference is downstream, in the distribution network itself." Marcus frowned. "The pipes? But we just inspected the whole system 3 months ago. May I feel the distribution manifold?" Marcus led her to where the main pipe branched into 4 distribution lines, each controlled by its own valve. Kayla moved slowly along the manifold, her hands pressing against different points, her expression intensely focused. "Here," she said suddenly, pressing against the second distribution line. "Feel this." Marcus put his hand where hers had been. The vibration felt off, like there was something interfering with the normal flow pattern. "There's a blockage," Kayla said. "Not complete, but significant." And here, she moved to the 3rd distribution line, another. "The pump is working against resistance that shouldn't be there. That's why your efficiency is so low." Marcus stared at her. "How can you tell that from just feeling the vibration?" "I cannot see," Kayla said simply. "So I learned to understand the world through other senses. Vibration, temperature gradients, air movement, they all tell stories if you know how to listen. On my homeworld, I spent years studying the flow systems in the palace, water, air, energy. I could diagnose problems that the sighted engineers missed because they relied too much on their instruments and not enough on direct sensation." She turned her unfocused gaze toward him. "You need to clear those blockages. If you can restore normal flow resistance, your backup pump will be sufficient until you can repair or replace the primary." Marcus felt a surge of something like hope. "The access points for those lines are," he checked the schematic on his handheld, "in the field manifold stations. Eastern Field 2 and Eastern Field 4. I can get crews out there tonight. May I come?" Kayla asked. I might be able to help identify the exact locations of the blockages. Marcus didn't hesitate. Absolutely. They took a transport cart out to the eastern fields, Jenna and 2 other mechanics joining them. The field manifold stations were small buildings, housing the valve controls and pressure regulators for their respective zones. Eastern Field 2 came first. Inside, Marcus opened the access panel to the main distribution pipe. Okay, according to the sensors, everything here should be normal. But Kayla was already moving, her hands on the pipes. She traced the line, feeling the vibration pattern. Here, she said, indicating a section about 2 meters downstream from the valve. The blockage is here. The flow pattern changes at this point. It becomes turbulent, chaotic. Marcus brought over the portable scanner, focused it where she indicated. The readout made his eyebrows rise. She's right. There's something in the pipe here. Looks like mineral buildup. How did this get past the filtration system? We had that contamination event 6 months ago, Jenna said. Remember? When the filtration system went offline for 3 days. Sediment must have gotten into the distribution network and gradually accumulated. They cut into the pipe carefully, using a containment collar to prevent water loss. Inside, they found exactly what Kayla had predicted, a thick ring of mineral deposits that had built up over months, restricting flow by almost 60%. Holy hell, Jenna breathed. This would have gotten worse too. Another month and the pipe would have been completely blocked. They cleared the blockage, moved on to Eastern Field 4, found another accumulation exactly where Kayla indicated it would be. By midnight, they'd cleared 3 major blockages and 5 minor ones. When they fired up the backup pump again, the efficiency jumped to 73%. That'll do it, Marcus said, watching the numbers stabilize. That'll keep the eastern fields alive until we can get a replacement for the primary pump. He turned to Kayla, who stood quietly to the side. You saved the colony's food supply. You know that, right? Kayla's expression was difficult to read. I simply felt what was there. You felt what none of us could detect with our instruments, Jenna said. She looked at Kayla with new respect. That was incredible. Word spread quickly through the colony. The blind princess had solved the problem that the human mechanics couldn't figure out. She'd saved the eastern fields. Suddenly, people looked at her differently, not with pity or discomfort, but with curiosity, even appreciation. Kayla started spending more time in the maintenance bay. At first, she just observed, listening to Marcus and the other mechanics work. But gradually she began contributing. She could diagnose problems in the colony's aging systems just by feeling the vibrations, hearing the subtle changes in rhythm that indicated developing failures. She could sense temperature differentials that suggested insulation, failures or energy leaks. Marcus started taking her on his rounds, and together they became an unlikely team. He provided the technical knowledge and the hands to do the repairs. She provided a diagnostic ability that exceeded any sensor they had. The colony's system started working better than they had in years. It's like she can feel the whole colony's circulatory system. Marcus said one evening to Administrator Wang. They were in Wang's office, reviewing the maintenance reports. She found a crack in the primary water tank that our sensors missed completely. Said she could feel the pressure gradient shifting in the wrong pattern. If that had gone undetected for another week, we'd have had a catastrophic failure. Wang nodded slowly. The council has been discussing her situation. We want to make her an official member of the maintenance department, with pay and full colonial citizenship if she wants it. Is that something she'd be interested in? You should ask her, Marcus said. But yeah, I think she would be. This place has been good for her. She's good for this place. The offer was made. Kayla accepted. She moved out of the temporary quarters and into a small apartment closer to the maintenance bay. She started eating with the other mechanics in the communal hall, joining their conversations. becoming part of their community. Marcus watched her transform from the dignified, isolated figure in the plaza to someone who smiled, who laughed, who belonged. And he tried not to think about the fact that he'd started looking forward to seeing her every day with an intensity that had nothing to do with her diagnostic abilities. 4 months after Kayla's arrival, the royal ship returned to it descended at dawn. The same impossible elegance, the same bioluminescent gold. But this time, it came alone, no ceremony, no advance warning. The ship landed in the plaza, and the same high-ranking guard from before emerged. His expression unreadable. Marcus was with Kayla in the pump station when they got the message to come to the administrator's office. They walked together in silence, and Marcus felt tension radiating from her. In the office, the guard stood with Wang, up close. Marcus could see this was a different individual than he'd first thought, though wearing the same rank markings. His face was sharp, his manner curt. "Princess Kalaneth," the guard said, his tone formal. "I am Commander Cephas Vasvaldari. I bring word from your father, the Solar King. Your exile is ended. You are summoned to return to the homeworld." Kayla stood very still. "For what purpose?" "His Majesty has reconsidered the matter of your condition. Medical advancements have been made. There is now a possibility of restoring your sight through genetic reconstruction. You are to return immediately to undergo the procedures." Marcus felt his heart drop. He glanced at Kayla, but her face was an unreadable mask, the same royal dignity she'd worn in the plaza 4 months ago. "I see," she said quietly. "And if I choose not to return?" Commander Cethos's expression hardened. "That is not an option. You are a princess of the Vuldari sovereignty. Your presence is required. The ship departs in 3 hours." He turned and left without further discussion, his meaning clear. This wasn't a request. When he was gone, Kayla turned her unfocused gaze toward Marcus. "I need to speak with you, privately." They walked to the observation deck that overlooked the water fields. It was morning, and the alien sun was rising, painting the purple sky with streaks of gold. Kayla stood at the railing, her hands gripping the metal. "They want to fix me," she said, her voice flat. "Is that what you want?" Marcus asked carefully. "I don't know." She was quiet for a long moment. "My whole life I've been told that my blindness makes me incomplete. That I'm broken. A flaw in the royal bloodline. When I was young, they tried dozens of treatments, each one promising a cure. Each one failing. Eventually, they gave up trying to fix me and sent me away instead. That's why they sent you here," Marcus realized. "Not as cultural exchange or even real exile. They wanted you out of sight, away from the court where you embarrassed them." "Yes." Kayla's hands tightened on the railing. "But here, for the first time in my life, I've been valued for what I can do rather than pitied for what I cannot. I've had purpose. I've had..." She turned toward him. "I've had friendship. Real friendship, not the careful courtesy of people who pity me, or the cold tolerance of those who wish I didn't exist." "You don't want to go back," Marcus said. "Is that selfish?" Kayla asked. "They're offering me my sight. The thing I've been told my whole life that I need to be whole. And I'm thinking of refusing because I found contentment in a colony at the edge of nowhere with a human mechanic who sees me as I am rather than what I lack." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "What do you want?" "Not what they want, not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" Kayla was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I want to stay here, with you. With this work. With this life where I matter." "Then stay," Marcus said simply. "It's not that easy. I'm still a princess. They can compel me to return." And she hesitated. What if they're right? What if I'm refusing this chance because I'm afraid? What if I could have sight, and I'm choosing blindness because it's familiar? "Can I tell you what I see when I look at you?" Marcus asked. She nodded. I see someone who can diagnose a failing system just by feeling its heartbeat. I see someone who knows the rhythms and patterns of this colony better than people who've lived here for years. I see someone who's saved our food supply, prevented a catastrophic water tank failure, identified 17 developing problems before they became crises. I see the best diagnostic specialist this maintenance department has ever had. He stepped closer, but more than that, I see someone who's kind, who listens when people talk, who remembers that Jenna likes her coffee with extra sweetener, and that old Henderson in Building 4 has trouble with his knees. So you always make sure the lift is working when you're inspecting that sector. I see someone who's become part of our community, not because of a title or royal blood, but because of who you actually are. Marcus, if you want your site back, I'll support that, Marcus continued. If that's what will make you happy, then you should go. But don't go because you think you're broken. Don't let them make you believe that you need to be fixed. You're not incomplete, Kayla. You're extraordinary exactly as you are. Kayla reached out, and Marcus took her hand. Her fingers interlaced with his, and they stood there in silence as the sun rose higher. I'm going to refuse, Kayla said finally. I'm going to tell them I choose to stay. They might not accept that. Then I'll make them understand, Kayla said, and there was steel in her voice now. I'm a princess of the Valdari sovereignty. I have rights, even ones I've never exercised before. They cannot force medical procedures on me against my will, and they cannot compel me to leave a place where I've been formally granted citizenship. Administrator Wang did file those papers, didn't he? Last month, Marcus confirmed that I'm a citizen of Colony Outpost 7. This is my home now, if it will have me. It will, Marcus said. I will. Kayla turned toward him fully, and though her eyes couldn't see his face, he felt the intensity of her focus. Marcus Chen, are we speaking of more than professional partnership and friendship? Marcus's heart hammered. I don't know, maybe. I've never. I mean, you're an alien princess, and I'm a mechanic who smells like coolant fluid most of the time. But yeah, I care about you. More than I probably should. Why should you not? Kayla asked. I'm an alien mechanic who experiences the world differently than you do, but I care for you as well. Your kindness, your respect for what I can do rather than pity for what I cannot. You've given me something I've never had before. You've given me the freedom to be myself. She squeezed his hand. So yes, we're speaking of more. If you're willing to navigate that complexity. I've navigated worse, Marcus said, and Kayla laughed a real, genuine laugh. That made his chest feel warm. 2 hours later, Kayla stood in Administrator Wang's office facing Commander Sethos. Marcus stood beside her, along with Wang and 3 other Colony Council members. I appreciate my father's concern, Kayla said, her voice calm and royal. But I must respectfully decline to return at this time. I have responsibilities here that I cannot abandon, and I am content with my current situation. Commander Sethos's expression darkened. Princess, you cannot be serious. You would refuse the chance to restore your sight? To return to your proper place in the royal court? My proper place is where I am valued and useful, Kayla said. I have found that place here. I am a citizen of this colony, recognized under both human and Valdari law. I have rights, including the right to refuse medical procedures and the right to choose my residence. His Majesty will not be pleased. Then His Majesty can come here himself and explain why he believes I should abandon work that matters to me, people who value me, and a life where I have finally found purpose, Kayla said, and there was no give in her tone. I am his daughter, not his property. I am done being treated as an embarrassment to be hidden away or a problem to be fixed. I am whole as I am, and I choose to stay where that wholeness is recognized. The commander stared at her, clearly not having expected this response. You realize this will have consequences, diplomatic consequences. Your father may sever ties with this colony entirely. Then that will be his choice, Kayla said. I can only make mine. Wang stepped forward. Commander, Colony Outpost 7 extends its respect to the Solar King, but we will not compel any citizen to leave against their will. The princess has been granted full citizenship here, and we honor her choice. We hope the Valdari sovereignty will respect that decision. Commander Cephas looked between them, his frustration evident. Finally, he inclined his head stiffly. I will convey your message to His Majesty. But know that you may be forfeiting your royal status entirely, Princess. Once you make this choice, there may be no returning. I understand, Kayla said. And I accept those consequences. The commander left. The royal ship departed. And Kayla stayed. The response from the Valdari sovereignty came 2 weeks later. It was terse, a formal document recognizing Kayla's right to choose her residence, but noting that she was now considered a private citizen rather than a member of the royal family. Her titles were suspended indefinitely. She would receive no support or recognition from the sovereignty. Kayla read the translated document, Marcus reading it aloud for her, and smiled. Freedom, she said simply. They've given me complete freedom. Life in the colony continued. Kayla and Marcus became inseparable, both professionally and personally. They worked together during the day, maintaining the aging systems that kept the colony alive. In the evenings, they walked through the water fields together, Marcus describing the way the alien sunset painted the sky, while Kayla shared stories of her childhood in the royal palace, of the siblings who had pitied or ignored her, of the life she'd left behind without regret. 6 months after she'd refused to return, a supply ship arrived with an unexpected delivery. A replacement pump for the Eastern distribution system, top of the line. Far better than anything the colony could have afforded. The manifest listed it as a donation from an anonymous benefactor, but tucked inside the crating was a small note, written in Valdari script. Marcus had it translated. For my daughter, who finally taught me that sight is not the only way to see clearly. Be well. Your father. Kayla held the note for a long time, her fingers tracing the characters she could not see but could feel. Tears slipped down her face, not of sadness, but of something more complex. Closure, maybe. Or the beginning of healing. He's trying, she said softly. It's not acceptance, not yet, but it's an acknowledgement. That's more than I ever expected. Marcus wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Think you'll ever go back to visit? Maybe someday, Kayla said. When I'm ready. When I can go as who I am, not who they want me to be. She leaned against him. But this is home now. These fields, this colony, these people who see me for what I can do rather than what I cannot. This is where I belong. With me? Marcus asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. With you, Kayla confirmed. She turned and reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the features she had learned through countless careful mappings. With the human mechanic who saw my true power when no one else could. A year after Kayla's arrival, Colony Outpost 7 applied for an upgrade in status, petitioning to become a recognized settlement rather than just an outpost. The application was approved, largely because of the colony's suddenly excellent maintenance record and remarkable efficiency improvements. They held a celebration in the plaza, the same plaza where Kayla had first arrived to whispers of broken princes and damaged goods. Now she stood there as chief diagnostic specialist, surrounded by colonists who'd become friends, beside the man she loved, in a place that had learned to value different kinds of sight. Administrator Wang gave a speech thanking everyone who'd helped make the upgrade possible. When he mentioned Kayla's contributions, the applause was thunderous. Marcus leaned close to her, speaking under the noise. You saved this place, you know. Not just the water system or the other repairs. You showed everyone here that being different isn't the same as being less. That there are other ways to see what matters. Kayla smiled and squeezed his hand. You showed me that first. He saw value where everyone else saw limitation. You gave me the chance to prove what I could do. So we saved each other. Marcus said. Yes, Kayla agreed. I think we did. The celebration continued around them, but they stood together in their own moment of peace. The blind princes who had been sent away as a joke, and the overlooked mechanic who had recognized her potential. Two people the world had tried to tell were broken, proving together that wholeness came in many forms. The purple sky above them deepened toward night, and the colony's lights began to glow, a small beacon of human and Vuldari cooperation at the edge of known space. A place where sight was appreciated, but not required. Where value was measured. Not in perfection but in contribution, not in appearances but in insight. Where a princess had finally found her kingdom, and a mechanic had found someone who understood that the best way to see what truly matters is sometimes not with eyes at all, but with hands that can feel the heartbeat of the world, and a heart brave enough to embrace different ways of being. Whole, they stayed there in the plaza long after the celebration wound down, two figures standing close, connected not by sight, but by something deeper: understanding, respect, and a kind of love that sees clearly regardless of whether eyes are involved. In the end, the royal court had been right about one thing. Kayla had learned humility and the value of simpler things during her time among humans. But they'd been wrong about everything else. She hadn't learned that she was broken. She'd learned that she never had been.